Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
What's up, Craig?
It was number 18. Big minutes from Miller and Rapp. It was 18. Noah Williams with the trap.
Oh,
18. CJ and Bonton put him away. Okay, that's my Alice Cooper impression.
Love it. Love it. Dude, are you still floating like I am?
Yeah, it's great, dude. And what I was referencing, only the 18th time WSU has ever beaten UCLA in basketball. So
that's not very many.
Even if UCLA is not the UCLA of old, it's always a big win.
Yeah, don't care.
And especially in such a fashion was fantastic. Before we get too deep into that, I'm Craig Powers. With me is Jeff Nusser.
Hello.
This is Podcast versus Everyone.
Hell yeah, it is.
Welcome.
Victory Podcast versus Everyone.
Yeah, Basketball Victory Edition.
Basketball Victory, Happy Beer Edition.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. Like, okay, so I mean, I'm sure we'll get into I don't know. Am I totally cutting you off right now? I'm just like so excited.
Go for it, man.
Okay, so one of the things you mentioned to me when we were chatting, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but was just this idea that, like, for the last 5 years, there have been moments where the team has sort of jumped up and done a thing, and in the back of your mind, you're happy because, we're Cougs, we're, like our team wins, that makes us happy. Right. But in the back of your mind, you always knew that it was completely unsustainable and eventually was going to turn back into shit. Right. Like, this is like the John Wooden Classic thing. This is like last year's road trip to Arizona where they came up with those two, like, just inexplicable wins. Right. Like, you were like, yeah, this is exciting. And that was fun. But that it's going to go back to what it was. Like,
Right.
The foundation's bad. And this just like, they didn't even win both the games, right? I mean, they lost by 9, right, to USC, damn near double digits to USC.
Yep.
And then they need overtime to beat UCLA, and UCLA is certainly, as we talked about last week, no great team. But, just the way it happened, the way it went down, you cannot help but get excited because you're looking at this going, okay, the defense that is powering the team right now, totally sustainable. Right? Like, that's and when they get better players, theoretically, the defense will get better. Right? Like you're looking like this sustainable, and you're just like, okay, they just need a modicum of offense, and that's a thing that you can improve by adding talent to some degree.
Well, you're talking about you had Tony Miller playing.
Yeah.
Let's see, 56 minutes over the two games over the weekend, a 6'6", 210 power forward. And the way they held both UCLA and USC well under a point per possession, and both who have front lines that are 6'10", 6'9", big dudes, 250 type dudes, and against USC, Pollard was out for most of the game, and Miller had to step in, and then they just couldn't get him off the floor in the second half. Because he was playing so well against UCLA. So, like, you're looking at, when you're talking about when we have better players, yeah, like, right now we're rolling with, and nothing against Miller, he's playing really well, but, like, he's 6'6", power forward, 6'6", 210, not a big guy, and we're still, like, D'ing up against these teams with athletic, big, like, athletic 6'10" bigs, and it's really cool to see. Yep. Also, the just to watch the way Smith coaches a game, and we can get into UCLA. I thought we should probably get into UCLA first because it's more fun, and
it's more recent.
But man, that we are and so is Coach Smith, the biggest haters of zone. And Smith is no fan of zone, and we know it, but. Man, switching to zone against UCLA completely changed that game. They were getting torn apart by Chris Smith and to a lesser extent Prince Ali just in one-on-one. And because Chris Smith at a 6'9" wing, and basically like a future NBA guy from what he's played the last couple games, like he definitely is looking like he's headed that way. But But yeah, just and yeah, him in foul trouble helped too. But UCLA had no idea what to do, and it wasn't. It was different from the zones we would see when Ernie would switch to some junk zone, because there was effort. Like the three at the top of the zone were trapping, they were pressing the ball, they weren't giving up open looks, and the two in the back were just busting their ass, and they were busting their ass to get rebounds too, because obviously rebounding in the zone is difficult. But they were guys like Noah Williams were just jumping up, just doing whatever they could to get their hand on a tip or whatever, just to knock it over to their teammate. And it was crazy to see a defense that we've you and I, obviously not on this podcast as much, but last spring we did, just much maligned type of defense, and just to see it be, especially when you throw it in as kind of a one-off, just to work so well and I think it's because of the way that Smith has instilled defensive effort in these guys, because if zone does not work if you're not working your ass off like you're playing a man defense. Like it doesn't work. And they were busting their ass. Like,
yes,
they were trapping the ball. They were like, you would think that the way they were running that zone, it looked like a team that ran that zone all the time. And it's just because their effort was there, and they were creating turnovers, they were creating tough shots, they were putting UCLA, really all UCLA could do was hope that their bigs could hit a fadeaway 12-footer, and they did a couple times, but they missed quite a few of those, and otherwise they were forced into shot clock violations. They were forced into deep threes or deep twos that that were contested.
Yep.
Like it was crazy just how well it worked. And it was a stroke of genius to move to that, because they could have stuck with the man, and they probably would have lost. Like they probably would have fouled out a bunch of guys, because you had CAJ Ellaby was in foul trouble for much of the game. Your other bigs were kind of getting they were starting to get pressed. Smith in particular was really starting to press them, and the zone kind of took him out of the game to a point when he was in. Like, yeah, he had that 12-footer, but that was all they had, and yeah, it was just crazy to watch. Like a team that plays man all the time just transition to a zone so smoothly and with so much effort. It was so cool.
Well, we saw so much zone the last couple of years with Ernie, right?
Mm-hmm.
and it was a horrible zone, like a really, really, really horrible zone. One of the things that I was kind of marveling at in looking at our stats as a team is we are actually one of the teams in the country with I'm trying to think of how to say this right. Our opponents have one of the fewest percentages of their baskets made via assist. Did that make sense? I don't know if it did or not, but the idea is that, yeah, like not very many of the makes against us come via an assist. And we're like 8th least in the country. That's a huge contrast the last couple of years where we were like in the top half of the country in both of those. And it's not necessarily a stat that's good or bad, right? Like it's not necessarily good to have the other team with few assists, and not necessarily bad either way. But I think given what we saw the last couple of years, like, so we're running that zone. Typically, a high opponent assist rate is indicative of a zone, right? Because you need to pass to beat a zone. Well, our zone was really easy to beat with a couple of passes, right? So it made sense that, we're running primarily zone, and team makes a couple of passes, reverses the ball, dumps it in, whatever, and wide open shot, right? So this year what you're seeing a team that mostly is playing, hard-nosed man-to-man defense. And is forcing teams, when a team tries to, say, reverse the ball or get the ball, when somebody helps the helper and, potentially there could be, a ball reversal to get an open look or something like that. Our guys are scrambling back, they're disciplined, and they're getting back in position, right? So where you normally would have a shot coming off an assist, that shot's not wide open anymore, right? So you actually saw that a little bit in the zone we were running. You mentioned how they were working their ass off. Well, they were running what ostensibly was a 3-2 zone, right? Or 2-3 zone, but there was basically three guys up top. The guy in the middle, whichever side the ball went to, he was kind of sinking down to the free throw line to prevent the ball from being entered into that kind of soft spot right in the middle of the zone in the key. And Eldridge Recasner, everybody's favorite Pac-12 network analyst, and I don't know, maybe we could talk about how fucking terrible that guy was for 2 games, but he kept talking about he kept talking about the soft spot in the zone, and it's like they hit that spot like one time, right? It was like I think on the second possession we ran zone, and then after that we just like the guy at the top was just hustling his ass off, jumping out, jumping back, jumping out, jumping back, and they were working really, really hard. And that's what prevented UCLA from getting the easy looks. And what's crazy about it is, and I know I'm kind of rambling, but UCLA did really well against UW zone. Like they had a guy, Kyman, right, who made 7 threes, and they were just kind of bombs away. What was crazy was we both ran a zone and we prevented them from shooting threes, which is sort of one of our, MOs of our defense. It was awesome, man. It was so awesome and so fun to watch.
Yeah. And then of course, come down to the most important possession of the game, the UCLA's final possession. They come out in man-to-man, and you're thinking, okay, this is interesting. And Chris Smith has the ball up top with, I believe, with Miller on him, and you're like, this is not a good matchup for us. Smith.
Yeah, there's about 15 seconds, and he's kind of dribbling and waiting.
He's 3 inches taller, but he gets to about 4 seconds, and he's just about to make. I think he took way too long to make his move. But,
yeah, I think so.
But obviously, then Noah Smith just pops off his guy, and totally surprised him. Had no idea he loses the ball. I don't even know if Noah touched the ball. Like he just loses the ball, and UCLA doesn't even get a shot off with a chance to win the game. And that was just so cool to see. Like. And Noah's defensive intensity is sometimes over the top.
Yeah.
But like it's just so crazy how to see a freshman work so hard on defense. Like he's just all over the place. Sometimes he's gonna have to learn that the refs aren't buying the flops a little bit. But other than that, man, he made some huge plays on defense and offense this game. Him and I wanted, and I alluded to him in the song up top, but him and Rapp, like it was so cool to see freshmen play a big role in this win. That truly wouldn't have happened without the two of them, both them and Bonton, sparked the run when WSU was down 11 in this game with 13 minutes to play, and then Ryan Rapp comes on the floor. Like who knew? Who knew, man? Like
yeah. Freshman from Australia. It seemed like, okay, this is a guy who, might be a candidate for a red shirt. And then, he played a little bit earlier this year. But you were like, okay, he's super raw and undeveloped. Well, and then he comes in and what did he do? He canned a 3, right? And then
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't make a 3. No, he had a dribble off the 3-point line. That's what it was, right? So they found him in the corner and did a little pump fake and then had a little dribble and a little finger roll. He was really good. And I think what made that zone so effective was you had Bonton up there, but then he was flanked by Williams and Rapp, and both those guys are 6'5". And so where the last, however many years against Ernie, we're running that shitty zone. And part of the problem is, we're running midgets out there, right? We're running 6', 6'1", 5'11" guys out there to contest shots on the perimeter. And that's silly. Right, it's absolutely silly, and so we ran this zone with those two guys kind of at the top, and
Bonton's
UCLA
6'3", so
he's not short, So Kyle Smith was like 2 steps ahead of Mick Cronin the entire night, and that was so fun to watch. To watch your coach operating, 2 steps ahead of the other coach when, for the last 5 years, we've watched our coach just basically do nothing. It was really cool, that play with Williams at the end of regulation. I mean, guaranteed that was called in the huddle.
Right.
They were like, okay, they're going to get the ball to Smith. Let's make sure. And they actually switched to get Miller onto Smith. I don't know if you remember that, but like he wasn't on Smith at the beginning, and then they actually switched CJ off of Smith because they didn't want CJ picking up a cheap foul. At least I assume that's what it was. Or maybe they wanted more like, I think they switched CJ onto Kyman, so maybe they wanted to make sure that he couldn't get off a clean look. But either way, they switched Miller onto Smith, and then guarantee in the huddle that was called like, okay, listen, when he puts the ball on the ground, you just run at him. He's not the greatest ball handler, I mean, so, just run at him, get your hand in there and see if you get your hand on a ball. And like, as soon as he dove for the ball, like the ball popped out and, that was that. And we were heading to overtime. And by the way, speaking of CJ Ellaby, big balls shot.
Oh yeah.
Big balls shot.
Speaking of a hell of a set they drew up.
Yeah.
CJ inbounds to Bonton. He fakes a handoff to Rapp. Dribble drive, draws the defense, kicks out to Ellaby, and Ellaby needs the three. 20 seconds left, and buries it. When CJ, up until that point, combined on the weekend, I believe was 5 of 33.
Yep.
Until he hit that shot.
So
yeah,
bad.
USC and UCLA combined until he hit that shot, and then he had a layup in overtime. So he ended up 4-13 in that game. But he was 2 of 11 against UCLA, 3 of 22 against USC. So you got to think, like, how much confidence do you still have at that point? And he just, they draw the play up for him.
I loved it,
and he buries it.
Funny thing about that set too, like when you looked at it, so they fake the handoff. Bonton drives to the rim, and they actually had Pollard coming out to set a screen for CJ to get him free to the corner. Pollard ended up with nobody to screen because all of the UCLA defenders ran after Bonton.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, right. Because typically when that guy goes to the rim, it's like shots going up no matter what, right? But Bonton really, I thought, had a really nice game. Still not the most efficient thing you'd ever see. 17 points on 14 shots, but anytime you have more points than shots, you feel okay, and he still had 3 turnovers, but he did have 5 assists. And, especially in the second half of the game, as they were coming back, he was sort of looking to make plays for others, and still UCLA went, okay, Bonton's going to the rim, let's all run right at him. And then of course, like I said, Pollard was looking for somebody he was looking to screen CJ's man, and he was sort of standing there with nobody to screen because his man completely left him, and which gave CJ the wide open shot from the corner, and it was pretty great. And then Bonton, of course, went NBA Jam on fire mode in overtime, which was crazy.
Just he's. I mean, obviously they start well, but he starts with a little turnaround in the lane, and then those 2 just up against the clock step backs off the dribble, like we're just crazy. Like there's a type of shots that he's been taking that drive you crazy all year.
Yep.
But in the biggest moment, he buried him. Like it's like, all right, man. Like this is why Kyle Smith lets him shoot, because this is probably what they see in practice more often. The guys hitting the shots.
Gotta assume.
Yeah, and so it was cool. You kind of were hoping, you watch this guy slinging all year, just slinging everything, that this would come through in a big moment like that. But he was actually up until the last 2 minutes of the game, he kind of reverted back to of regulation after he had been distributing in the comeback for about 10 minutes, just being kind of waiting for his shot or finding for others. He kind of like went into hero mode, and that's how WSU kind of found itself in a deficit, needing to come back with that 3 at the end by Ellaby. But then he kind of stayed in hero mode for the overtime, and it worked out because he also came with that huge block that on I think it was Jules Bernard. He swatted. Apparently they played he and Ellaby played on against Bernard in AAU, and so it was a real, they wanted to beat Bernard that was a big thing for them. And Bonton showed He showed this weekend that he's on the floor for defense, and he just happens to be one of the few guys on our team that can create a shot on his own. But his defense was impressive, and then his offense, finally came through to help deliver a win.
Yeah, it finally matched, right? And people have been saying, we get these comments on Coug Center about Bonton, and look, we've even expressed, right, some frustration at times with his loose nature in terms of shot selection. But we've talked about why it is that he's probably allowed a little bit more of a free rein than we all would like, and I know fans kind of get frustrated. They're like, well, why can't he just take a better shot? And it's like, okay, but somebody's got to shoot it, right? And early in the year, the offense was ragged, right? Like just like the sets were bad, and everything was just not very sharp. And so at some point, somebody just had to kind of put the ball on the ground and go take a shot. And that was Bonton, and that was Ellaby, and that was it.
And I don't think we've fully come out of that yet.
I don't think so fully, but I do think it's gotten quite a bit better. I feel like our offensive sets are better. Things are a little sharper, a little crisper. And I think that's part of what you're seeing with, Bonton, getting some assists. And I do think they're falling into some bad shots still. Ellaby obviously, forced a ton of shots against USC. I'm sure we'll talk about that game, but, that crazy, terrible shooting game he had there, forced some shots that were definitely not within the offense. But I feel like at this point, when they run the offense, they typically can get some okay shots. And now some of that's going to be depending on the opponent. Part of the problem with USC was they just really, really struggle with USC length, and they're going to struggle with long teams. Like I think I said this last night, Washington might beat us by 30, and that's not because Washington is necessarily 30 points better than us. They're just a really, really bad matchup. They're like exceptionally long, and they run that zone, and they're just asking for you to shoot threes, and we're not a great 3-point shooting team. It's just like, we're going to struggle against teams like that. But when they play hard and, they play the defense they play, they're going to keep themselves in a ton of games. And then, you go on a little offensive run like they did against UCLA, and, all of a sudden you're in it. And just the toughness on the team is just something that's really cool. And USC 9-point loss might have been the most proud I've been of a Cougar basketball team in years. They just fought so damn hard. And with the injuries they had and everything else, they just could not.
Ellaby not being able to.
Yeah, Ellaby couldn't have shot. I mean, if Ellaby has a normal night, they probably win that game, right? So, all things, put together, the foundation's in the right place. And there are, if they can add some offensive talent, some of this talent's going to mature between this year and next year. And, they're adding a couple guys, and, they've still got a scholarship to play with. So, if they can get the offense looking a little bit better, the defense is going to be what it is. You can see the building blocks for something that can turn into something where we didn't see any of that for 5 years. Like there was maybe Ernie's first year. I kind of talked myself into, okay, like there maybe, all right, I think I can kind of, and then, it was 4 years of garbage. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And to go back to the point of Smith is like, just the way we attacked each team. It seemed to be a point of emphasis to attack the offensive glass against USC. And then against UCLA, it was more, let's get back on defense. And so you see against UCLA, they only got 6 offensive rebounds, only 15% of the chances. But against USC, particularly in the first half, they overall got 20 offensive rebounds, 33% of the chances, which is more along what they normally do. But UCLA, they obviously saw something like, hey, this is not worth our time, because you saw guys crashing against USC, but UCLA, no. So obviously there was something Kyle saw that like maybe I think probably UCLA's guards a little bit better than USC's guards, maybe at pushing the break. So maybe he saw that. I don't know. Obviously I don't know what he was thinking, but it was it's
Well,
it
they're
was
just.
interesting to see.
I would say I think it's probably just that they're a dominant rebounding team. Like that's the one thing they do well is defensive rebounding and offensive rebounding.
So is UCLA. So is USC.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
USC is a really good USC. It was. I'm sorry. I guess they weren't. They had been. I think they had a really bad weekend in it. But
UCLA 17th nationally in defensive rebounding percentage.
Yeah.
So,
but they obviously just we're not going to get them. So let's not even try. And that's a pretty typical of Mick Cronin teams. That's his teams at Cincinnati. They lock down the glass and they lock down the defensive end. But yeah, this is. Coming into this weekend, we kind of thought USC would be we knew USC would be the tougher one.
Yep.
Onyeka Okongwu was just superlative. We had no answer for him. Like we had nobody to guard him. He's a lottery pick in a couple months, and
yep.
And he's we just don't have. I think the funny thing is I think Miller was the one that gave him the most trouble, especially
which is funny.
Especially offensively. Like when Miller had the ball, he was frustrating Okongwu. Like it was pretty funny.
It was funny.
It was funny. Our 6'6" Division II transfer is pissing off this future lottery pick. But overall, Okongwu was the very clear difference in that game because outside of him, USC was having trouble scoring, and outside of shots that he was setting up, obviously their bigs are what drove that. But it you take out Okongwu or you kind of level off Okongwu and our best scorer Ellaby, and that game looks different. But Ellaby was obviously just had a miserable night. You could see early on something that was, if we just want to transition to USC, maybe take a break and then we'll go into USC, or do you just want to roll with it?
Yeah, we can take a break.
Take a break and then we'll talk USC.
We're back.
So, what I was saying is when you saw early on, this was the problem with WSU's very, very weak non-conference schedule. They were clearly kind of bombarded by that. They were shocked at the level of athleticism that USC had, particularly when they had when WSU had the ball. I saw Ellaby kind of force some shots, hurry some shots up, and all the players, they just seemed to be kind of oh geez, we have not played a team like this with guards this big and this athletic and bigs this big and athletic at all at any point in this season. You haven't seen they've seen some shot blockers, but definitely not at the level of Okongwu and the rest of the guys down there like Recasner.ish. It was definitely because USC jumped out pretty quick at the start of that game. And WSU had to adjust. And I think that's what you were talking about with the effort that they put in. It looked like USC was going to run away with that game early because they were just dominating. WSU had no answers on offense, and then USC was kind of scoring pretty easily on defense, or when WSU was on defense. Even though Pollard got knocked out, Pollard's our only true big, and in terms of size, and he gets knocked out very early, and sent to the hospital, and then comes back miraculously at the end. So he gets knocked out very early. So you're with Tony Miller, playing the 4, Jazz Kuntz. Digging in there, you had Markovetsky getting more minutes than he's typically used to, and having a hell of a time guarding Okongwu. That was not a good matchup for him.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, he had no. It was
that was
no
a
chance.
struggle.
Yeah, and once USC saw that, Markovetsky was not long for the game.
Right.
But yeah, but they fought, man. Rodman logged 19 minutes in that game. I gotta think that's his season high by a long shot.
I think so.
And yeah, Noah played 19 minutes. It was just they had to do it, and it really the offense was the issue, particularly the shooting, and particularly Ellaby. Just 2 of 14 on twos, 1 of 8 from 3. 1 of 8 from 3 was probably the real dagger. We expected there to be real tough sledding inside, and he didn't have. Most of his 2-pointers were contested or difficult or anything. But the funny thing is, of course, our 6'6", 210 pound power forward Tony Miller was 7 of 11.
Yeah.
In that game, but what can you do? But yeah, so that was just a tough game for CJ. And it was a tough game again for UCLA against UCLA, but I hope maybe the way he finished kind of sparks him. But yeah, that was rough, and it kind of it reminded me quite a bit of the Santa Clara game, where if CJ would have just given anything, they would have had a shot to win. Yeah,
3 of 22 is almost unbelievable. Like number one, to miss that many shots. Number two, to even take that many shots. you just don't see that. Of course, Bonton also had 26 shots in that game. So between the two of them, they were 10 for 48, which, I don't need a calculator to know that's bad. That's really bad. Bonton at least finished with 18 points.
He had 4 threes.
Yeah, he hit 4 threes, which helped. But yeah, it's, sometimes you get in that kind of a funk. The bummer was that he was still in that funk, mostly against UCLA. So, hopefully a week off will give him a chance to reset a little bit. Cause we're obviously going to need him. May not need him to beat Cal. But playing on the road at Cal, that's certainly not going to be easy. Not for us. I don't know that anything's going to be easy for us. So, but it's the thing I think that I loved about that USC game, and I think something that displays just really kind of how hard they fought was, so Pollard went out in the first 5 minutes, and USC proceeded to go on a 15-2 run, took a 20-7 lead. At that point, according to Ken Palm, USC's win probability was all the way up to 88%. Okay, so it went up from 66% to start the game to 88% at that point. Okay. And then, for the remainder of the half, they kind of, clawed back until eventually, it was 29-27. And at that point, the win probability had dropped for USC to only about 70% in their favor. So pretty close to what it was at the beginning of the game, accounting for the fact that they were now down 2 and with only half a game to go. And then, second half, USC starts to stretch it out again. And eventually the win probability gets back up to 89% with just over 9 minutes to go, as USC is holding a 50-43 lead. So 9 minutes to go, we're down 7. The algorithm looks at our offense, looks at their defense, looks at the difference in the team qualities, and says, okay, WSU, you've got a roughly 10%-ish chance to come back and win this game. And then, what do? Bang, bang, 2 buckets, right? To pull back within 47-45. Win probability is only at 70% at that 72% at that point. So I know I'm spitting out a lot of numbers, but if you were looking at this, this graph of the various win probabilities at the various game states, what you see is kind of this rolling thing where eventually it ends up on USC's side, but it kind of goes up and then it comes down, and then it goes up a little bit, and then it comes down a little bit, and then eventually it goes up to where, okay, USC finishes it out. That sort of thing is really indicative of a team that, continues to fight, continues to pull back in. And when you play good defense, you play sound defense, you always give yourself a chance to pull back into a game. And I think that's the part that I think maybe we didn't articulate very well when we talked about, why we missed, the Bennett ball stuff, right? People kind of, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'm like, oh, the Bennett ball days, those were so great. And, the main reason why is they were winning. Like, I don't know that most of us were, longing for the days of Dick Bennett, right? Where it was like, yeah, like number 1, number 8 defense, whatever in the country, and the number, 250 offense. It's like,
right.
It was like pulling teeth. But at the same time, I think the thing that we couldn't always articulate, or maybe that we just didn't articulate very well, was just this idea that when you play defense like that, you always give yourself a chance. Now, maybe you have a terrible shooting night like we did against USC, and it's just painful and it's bad. And, it's like the old Dick Bennett days when Thomas Kaladi had a bad game and you just go, can't win, right? But, you just give yourself a chance. And, like I said, they were within 3 points with, 8 minutes to go, 7.5 minutes to go. USC closed it out, I think, on a 15-5 run or something like that, the remainder of the game. But, they were there. They were there. They just needed to hit some shots. And that feels like a foundation for some success at our particular school.
Yeah, and I hope that I hope it's noticed in some way. I hope the students who weren't back from break had it on TV and they saw, because you think when they pulled within 50-47, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was a breakaway dunk for CJ.
It was back to back.
And so if you're thinking like if that student crowd is going, there was no students there.
Right.
If you have a student crowd going, just the energy in that building, just to be able to provide that home court advantage that we don't really seem to have, like, especially right now. I mean, I'll give credit to the locals, because there was 2,500 people or something there for UCLA, which they obviously let them fill in kind of general admission in some of the student seats, so there was people there, but it's just not the energy that the students bring, obviously. And I'm hoping that maybe this weekend, I think, is really big for going forward for the when the Oregon schools come to town, especially for the Klay Thompson retirement night. It'd be great because WSU has a real tough schedule coming up after Cal, and some of those games are at home though, and it'd be cool if there was more energy in the building. So I think this weekend Cal is a one you kind of got to win.
Yeah,
they're bad, and we're not good, but they're worse.
That's a good way to put it.
And Stanford's going to be tough.
Yes.
It's going to be a tough game.
Yes.
And even when we're good, we don't win there very much.
Not typically.
But you got to hope they can once again at least split the weekend. Come into with the Oregon schools 2-2. Oregon's going to be a tough game. Oregon State's going to be a tough game. The schedule does not get easier from here. Our easiest back-to-back in conference play is UCLA and Cal, like that, those 2 games in a row. So
right.
It would be great to get these 2 wins to kind of spark the rest of the season, because after this, after Cal, you have number 50 on KenPom ratings. By the way, number 50, I believe Stanford's number 14 in the net rating, but they're number 50 in KenPom's ratings, which is probably more predictive of team quality than I think the net rating.
Yeah, the net rating is going strictly off results at this point. KenPom is still factoring in projections. That's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference.
So yeah, and we could have people on to talk about why projections matter, but Stanford. Stanford's number 50, Oregon's number 15, Oregon State's number 67, Colorado 39, and then Utah 100. And those Colorado-Utah games are at elevation
right.
road. So this is after Cal. It's tough, and it's a stretch that screams 5 losses. But you're just hope you get that win at Cal, and then you're gonna have a good crowd for Oregon State, and like you're just hoping that in this stretch we can kind of tread water. Actually, but there's not a lot of water. You're gonna have to tread water a lot. It's tough. Like The conference is better this year. WSU is a lot better. So is everyone else. I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna keep saying it because there's gonna be a point we're gonna lose some games and people are gonna freak out. And I just look, the Colorado, Oregon State, Stanford are all better than they were last year. And WSU is also, but it's still tough. But anyway, so coming up, maybe talk a bit about this weekend. We talked about Cal. They're 194 in KenPom. So they have also improved quite a bit from last year, but they are still very bad. Let's see. Last year, with the impressive Wyking Jones, finished 241. But with Mark Fox, they've ticked up to 194. So good luck to him on that rebuild. But
right.
But yeah, they are a slow-paced team. They shoot threes. They have some shooters, but they don't shoot very many threes. They give up 3-point shooting, but that doesn't really matter to us. They don't force many turnovers, and they do turn the ball over quite a bit. They are not a very good rebounding team. I could see us dominating that. They're not very good. Bradley's their best player. He's pretty good. He's a guard. I guess guard, kind of wing. And he's definitely going to shoot the bulk of their shots. And but I feel like we have the guys to defend him. So there's not a lot to defend outside of that. They don't have size that's going to kill us. Their biggest guy is 6'8", 255. So they're not the sort of team that gives us a matchup problem. So just on quality, WSU should win. Obviously, the away being Cal being at home helps, and that's probably why I think they are the slight edge on the toss up.
It's a coin flip.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's good to point out for people is that, we're ranked, 135, right? Something like that.
It's been fluctuating. It's
136. Okay, so it's 136 right now. Cal's 194. So you go, oh, well, we're, 60 spots better than Cal. True, but the difference between 136 and 194 probably isn't as big as you imagine. It's in terms of efficiency margin, you're talking a difference of 4 points per 100 possessions. So against an average team on a neutral floor, you would expect over 100 possessions for WSU to be 4 points better than Cal, right?
And so in a regular game, maybe
in a regular game, you're talking like 3 points, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking 70 to 75 possessions for us. So you're talking maybe 3 points on a neutral floor, right? Against an average opponent. Well, okay, so it's not a neutral floor. You're playing at Cal. So that's how you end up from, well, geez, we're 60 spots ahead of them to Pomeroy projecting a literal 50-50 coin flip on this game. So what I do like is kind of what you were talking about, that they're not necessarily strong in ways that give us a lot of trouble. They turn the ball over a bunch, which is always good for us. They're not a real strong offensive rebounding team. They're also not a great defensive rebounding team. And those are really for us kind of the two key factors. They don't force really any turnovers at all. They're one of the worst teams in the country at forcing turnovers. So they're not going to necessarily push us into something uncomfortable as far as taking care of the ball. So I think it matches up well for us, particularly to have a really good defensive game. Now it might be ugly. It might be the kind of game we win, 55-50 or something ridiculous like that. But I like our chances. I know Pomeroy projects it as a coin flip, and maybe I'm just, still, flying high after beating UCLA. But, I look at this game and I don't know, like I don't see the ways in which Cal, is set up to give us much trouble.
Now Stanford, on the other hand.
Yeah, that's different.
Stanford.
That's really different.
Stanford is playing defense, and that's their calling card. They are playing defense. They are forcing tough shots. They don't give up many, open threes. They block a lot of shots, even though they're not big. They're not super big, but it's kind of like a group effort. Like there's a couple like De Silva and Jones are their shot blockers, but they're not like elite shot blockers. It's just everyone's getting in there and getting their hands on the ball. Like so, they're obviously a deflection oriented defense. Which they force turnovers. One of the best teams in the country force turnovers. They have one of the best free throw defenses.
Yeah, how about that?
How
I
do
noticed
they do
that.
So that shows you they're a little bit lucky.
What are you talking about? That's all skill.
But yeah, they're very good defense. I mean, you look at their factors; they're all green, like
yes.
every single one.
That's what it used to. That's pretty much what it used to look like when we had Tony Bennett. Like we would just like look at this and go, "Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah,
we're good at all of it."
Besides forcing turnovers,
well, yeah. Well, we had some years there with Kyle Weaver, where we actually forced a lot of turnovers, particularly for a pack line team. So, but anyway. Yeah. Stanford's real good. That defense is gonna be hell for us.
It's scoring is gonna be tough.
It's gonna be rough. So.
But the other way, WSU should be able to clear. Like when WSU is on defense, they should be able to play good defense. Like there's not De Silva's a great player, but who's probably gonna be a tough guard. But outside of that, they obviously are getting back on. They're obviously eschewing offensive rebounds.
Yep.
To go get back.
Yep.
So we're going to clear all the defensive boards. They turn the ball over quite a bit, particularly their guards. So that's a good sign. That can help. They don't give up a ton of steals, but I mean, that's fine. Whatever. Give the ball to us any way you can. They're a pretty good shooting team, but that again plays into WSU's strength a little bit because they work hard to bother shots. Like it's not. I think that WSU can kind of replicate the defensive performance that they've had against UCLA and USC against Stanford. It's just that offense, like scoring. Is going to be tough.
It's going to be rough. Yeah, Stanford's only 2 losses this year to Kansas, the second-ranked team in Ken Palm's rankings, and Butler, the 5th-ranked team. And the loss to Butler was by a point, and then
on a neutral floor.
On a neutral floor, and then the loss to Kansas was by a few more, but still, yeah, it's they're a good team. They're a good team, and that's going to be tough. But, San Diego played them to within 3 points. And
I wouldn't be
San
surprised.
Francisco played them to within 8. And, they're not blowing people out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Stanford, though, ends up like a top 30 Ken Palm team by the end of the year.
Yeah.
You feel like they blew out Oklahoma. They do seem to play down to competition a little bit. So
well, let's hope for that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's It'll be probably an ugly game again.
Yeah, that's the way we like it.
Ugly that thing up. So Cal, Stanford, one's very bad, one's pretty good. It's going to be, hopefully we get that W on Thursday. Thursday is when WSU plays Cal, and then Saturday is the Stanford game.
Yeah, so. And like we talked about with USC and UCLA, it's a realistic expectation is to get one, right? So if you can get one, you're feeling pretty good. And if somehow you steal a sweep, then, more power to you.
And then after that, it's Clay weekend. So
yeah, hell yeah, you're going to that. I don't know if I am. We'll see. Well, I'm still working on that one.
To offer my bed to someone else.
I have a hard time turning down your bed, Craig. I just got to say that.
Keep it PG, man.
This is podcast versus everyone. We don't. we put that explicit rating on this shit every week, man. Yeah. I don't know. Is there a triple X rating? Is that where we need to go next?
Yeah.
X-rated. What's up, Craig?
X-rated. That's when we get into the fanfic. Is the X-rated stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
all right.
anyway.
So, basketball.
Yeah. It's exciting, man. People need to watch that shit. Like, I don't know if you have Pac-12 networks or not. If you don't, do what I did and find a friend who has it. Thanks, Greg. And watch it that way. But, like, you got to watch this team. Like, they are fun, man. They are fun. Even when the shooting's bad. Like, don't get hung up. And that's by the way, that's my advice when you watch the team. Do not get hung up on the bad shots. Do not get hung up on the offensive struggles. Just watch them play their asses off and just be excited about what that means. Because the way the organization on defense, the discipline on defense, the hustle on defense, and it's not like, I guess I'll even say this too. It's a different kind of defense than what we had with the Bennetts. The Bennetts with the pack line was just like, it was like this boa constrictor, right? Where it's like choking you out over the course of, at the time, 35 seconds, right? Like they're going to frustrate you and they're going to fluster you and they're eventually going to just get you to get so annoyed that you take a bad shot. This defense is not like that. This defense forces the action. They are in your face and they are like pressuring the ball and pressuring passing lanes. And the crazy part is that they are absolutely trying to generate turnovers and they're not getting themselves crazy out of position to do it, which is what's wild. Like, that's what I wanted Ernie Kent to do. I was like, if you can't coach defense, fine. Like, come up with some junky defense that tries to come up. And they did a little bit with the 1-3-1 when they used to run that garbage.
Yeah.
But it was like, just like, if you're not going to try and stay in front of anybody, then just go for as many steals as you can. Like, just, sell out for those, be weird. Okay, whatever. Look, these guys force a ton of turnovers and they do it in a way that is aggressive, but not so aggressive that they're out of position and giving up easy buckets. In fact, when they give up an easy bucket, it's almost kind of startling. Like, you're just like, wait a second, that's kind of easy. Like, that doesn't happen. They don't do that. They don't give those up. So yeah, that's the part, if you're kind of new to watching these guys, if you've been watching football for the last 4 months and you're like, okay, I'm finally ready for basketball. Really latch onto that. Watch them on the defensive end. Don't get hung up on the bad shots. Don't get hung up on the offensive problems. Just kind of take that for what it is. They're not a very talented offensive team, and appreciate the work ethic and the toughness, because those are the personality traits of the coach that they're taking on. And that's the stuff that's going to stick and allow them to be what they're going to be going forward.
Yeah. And don't feel too bad if you are kind of unprepared or don't know much about the team, because the guy who was paid to be the color analyst for the games this weekend, just Eldridge Recasner, former Husky, and Yakima Sun King.
Yakum.
Yakima Sun King. But he I don't know, Jeff. Do you think, outside of a conversation with Heister, who has covered probably at least half a dozen of our games this year, do you think he did any preparation?
No, I don't. Maybe looked at a box score.
Well, I mean, outside
maybe
of,
looked at a stat sheet.
A stat sheet. I don't
with
think he looked at box scores.
With counting stats.
With counting stats. I don't think he looked at. I don't think he looked at box scores of previous games. I think he looked at the averages and. He knew about Noah Williams, obviously,
because he's from Seattle.
Because he's from Seattle, and he
played on Rotary AAU
he
team.
Played on the Rotary AAU team, and he knows Gus Williams, obviously. But
right.
But outside of that, like, he was expressed shock. Well, one of my favorite lines at the start. It was early in the game against USC. Bonton pulls up for one of his classic 28-foot threes off the dribble, and he goes, "Wow, you weren't kidding, Greg. He really does have a quick trigger."
Yeah, wow. Like, no shit.
If you spent more than 4 minutes preparing for the game, you might have realized that. I don't know. Look at any stats. He shoots the ball a lot.
This is why, you and I sort of love Ken Palm. And sometimes people, I think, get, I don't know, like they think it's like this really, overwhelming mystical thing. And it's not. Like it's like if you're a baseball fan and you understand batting average, then you can understand rebounding percentage. You can understand turnover percentage. It's just turnovers divided by possessions, right? Or, you can understand usage, which is how many possessions end because of that player divided by the total number of possessions of the team. Like it's really that simple.
When they're on the floor.
Right, when they're on the floor. But it's really that simple. And so it's like, if you just learn a couple of things and you look at KenPom, you can spend 5 minutes looking at a team's sort of page and figure out like all of these things right away. If you knew anything about KenPom and you knew anything and you looked at our team for 5 seconds, you'd be like, oh wow, holy shit, Bonton, that dude takes a ton of shots and he's not very efficient with them. And you could do that without even having watched him for a minute, right? And yet here we are listening to Eldridge Recasner, who, apparently did not watch anything. I think my favorite thing was when they came out of a timeout, ran their little dribble drive weave, and then off of a handoff, Bonton, went to the basket. He ended up missing the shot, but it was off the dribble. It was off their weave, their handoff weave set, and then he takes the handoff and dribbles for the basket, and Recasner says something like, "Yeah, that's just too much one-on-one play for me. They're just too much one-on-one." And I'm like, that was a set out of a play where like 8 guys touch not 8, but you know what I mean? Like, I think all 5 guys touched the ball. Like, it's like, yeah, Bonton does do that, but he didn't on that one. It's just, yeah, clueless and very difficult. And Heister, like, seems like both those guys are probably very nice gentlemen, but it's like Heister even, I'm like, bro, you have called like how many of our games and you're still like surprised by our defense. It's like, I guess maybe after calling 5 years of Ernie Kent, he hasn't quite figured it out yet, but yeah. It's like, we play defense and it's good. Ridiculous.
I guess there was one more, one of my favorite Recasner on the play in overtime against UCLA, on the play that CJ fouled out on. Chris Smith. So they were still in the zone. The ball got swung to Chris Smith in the corner, and obviously CJ was the guy at the bottom of the zone, and so he was tasked with guarding the drive and fouled him. And Rick Hasner goes, "See, that's why they shouldn't play man to man on them. They like," and it was like they weren't playing.
They weren't playing man to man.
But even in a zone, you end up with one-on-one like responsibilities.
That does happen.
That tends to happen sometimes, and so it's just like, man, like that wasn't really what I would like. That's whatever. It was the lack of preparation. Like him calling the USC game was just like.
I'm pretty sure he didn't know Okongwu's last name. He kept calling him by his first name. Or maybe he was his friend. I don't know. Either way.
Maybe he also, at one point, said Machiavetsky.
Yes, that was a good one.
It was funny. It was right after Heister said Markovetsky.
Right.
He said Machiavetsky. Like,
yeah.
You're just like, you're like, you got one eye on the sheet like thing. It's like, yeah. Dude, I know. Come on, like I'm able to write 400 or 500 words to preview a team in 20 minutes because of KenPom, and and then I'm surprised by very little when the game transpires, like just because like you can see the tendencies of teams in the way that in the way they rebound and in the way they shoot and like the shots they take. And we also use hoop math, which is free. Like KenPom, to see a lot of these stats, you have to pay $20 whole dollars. $20
whole dollars for 1 year.
Like, which I find, if you're just a regular fan, fine, whatever. But like if you're a professional like analyst, that's like the cheapest bang for your buck you could possibly get.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me personally, like I wouldn't know what to do without it. Like it makes me sound smarter all the time.
Oh yeah.
And
like we're like, hey, this team is good at rebounding and blah 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 blah. And it's like it's just looking at the numbers,
But if you want to dig a little deeper, there's also another really cool site called hoopmath.com.
Yes.
And
Hoopmath is great.
Hoop-math.com. And the stats there basically tell you it breaks down shots at the rim, two-point jumpers, 3-point jumpers, put backs, things like that. So it kind of gives you it gives you an idea of the type of assisted makes, unassisted makes, things like that. So it gives you can figure out what a player is based on if they're taking unassisted. Like you look at Bonton, like I can pull it up real quick. Like Bonton, he only takes or Ellaby, only 4% of his 2-point jumper makes are assisted.
Right.
So obviously he's a creator. Only 59% of his threes are assisted. 56% of Bonton's. Those are actually really low numbers. It's very
Super
normal
low
to have assisted threes. Like it's very normal. Because if you look at Jazz Kuntz, every single one of his 3 makes have been assisted. Like he doesn't put the ball on the floor to take a shot, and if he does, he's not going to make the shot. So,
right.
So yeah, it breaks it down into their field goal percentage on 2-point jumpers on shots at the rim. So you can really get, which by the way, CJ's field goal percentage on shots at the rim is 72% right now. So he's doing really well when he gets to the rim. CJ, go to the rim, man. Which we've been wanting him to do more and more all season. But obviously this weekend it was a little tough. But still, like, go to the rim. But yeah, so Hoop Math, Ken Palm, like you can spend 20 minutes on these two sites and have a really good idea about what a team does and what their key players do.
Yep.
And you saw a guy this weekend that just clearly didn't take the time to do it, which is kind of frustrating. It's like you're covering this one team for 2 straight games over the course of 3 days. Like, why are you just relying on a conversation with a play-by-play announcer who's covered them like 6 times, like, and who isn't really tasked with analyzing, more just tasked with observing? So it was kind of frustrating. It was very frustrating watching the USC game, like him just being shocked at things that could happen. Like things that you would take 5 seconds, watch the team or whatever, or just watch one game. I don't know. Like take the time to watch one game. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
it was
whatever.
Pretty clear he hadn't watched any games.
Like not even a minute.
Like not even
1 minute.
Not even. And that was the thing. Like, I'm like, okay, you're a former player. I get it. You might not be into the numbers thing, whatever. And again, I think it's silly to think of it that way. It's always put in, stats are for nerds. It's like, numbers are for losers. Like it's not about trying to be like, look at the numbers and say, this is what it is, or try to be, like, it's not a Moneyball thing. This is just like, I mean, it can be, but what we are talking about is just using those numbers to give you inform you, right? Because you may not be able to. Even if you're Eldridge Recasner, you may not be able to sit down and watch, 10 games, right? I mean, if you watch 10 games of WSU and 10 games of UCLA so that you knew what you were talking about, like it's a pretty hefty time investment. So, okay, well, what's the shorthand? Well, you go look at these numbers. And it's like, it's obvious. Okay, Bonton obviously has taken a ton of shots and is really struggling. And you can know that just by looking at that. And you don't need to be, some kind of math whiz to know that. You just have to maybe do a little due diligence, look a little, and figure it out. And you can look and be like, they need a third scorer besides Ellaby and Bonton. Well, actually, they're getting pretty efficient scoring out of Jeff Pollard. Right? Like they're getting pretty efficient scoring out of Tony Miller. The only issue with those guys is they're not getting enough shots because Bonton and Ellaby are taking them all. Right? Like you can know that just by looking at those numbers. You don't have to necessarily watch the team. They're not lacking for a third scorer because they don't have anybody else who is scoring. They're lacking for a third scorer because there's not room for a third person to get enough shots up. Because 2 guys are taking almost all of them.
Yeah. So just for reference, when CJ Ellaby is on the floor, he takes 30.2% of the shots available. That is of WSU shots. That's 86 nationally. When Isaac Bonton's on the floor, he takes 30.7% of WSU shots. That's 75th nationally. We have two guys in the top 100 nationally in in the percentage of shots that they take when their team is on the floor.
And they're both on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, they're generally on the floor at the same time, in probably 90% of their minutes, are on the floor at the same time.
Right. So you figure 60% ish of the shots when those two are on the floor are going through those two guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see Miller and Pollard don't take a lot of shots. They're at 18% roughly each. Kuntz is a little below 18%. Gervais Robinson is at a way too high 15%.
Yeah. They're just, they're getting the leftovers, So like what if you want to argue, and I, certainly can get behind this argument, those two guys should shoot less so that somebody else can shoot a little, maybe Pollard, maybe Miller, because both of those guys have been pretty efficient. Now, granted, typically efficiency goes down as shots go up, but both of those guys have proven themselves to be reasonably efficient scorers. I mean, Jeff Pollard right now is the number 38 efficiency scorer in the country. Number 38. That's pretty good. So maybe that should happen.
We have other guys to score. It's just that if you're only looking at per game averages, it doesn't look that impressive. So but when you look at rate stats, it tells a different story.
Yep.
And
it doesn't take long to figure that out.
So we appreciate it, Mr. Recasner. You kind of gave us a reason to explain early in the season, in the Pac-12 season, all this nonsense that we spout about our different stats. So thank you for letting us do that. We appreciate it. But please do a little bit better next time.
Yeah. Do better. They're paying you real, actual money. Come on. Anyway. Yeah. Hey, what else? Should we talk? Hey, are you concerned that we don't have a defensive coordinator for the football team yet? Are you panicking yet?
A little bit.
Yeah, I'm in the little bit category too.
Yeah, I mean, we're to the point where what is it? So, Alex Grinch was announced in the middle, January 14th.
Yeah, we're getting close.
It's January 6th as we're recording this. They'll probably hire someone in between. By the time you'll hear it, so this all sound done. But yeah, I don't know. Man, it sure would be great if Rocky Long wanted to come coach.
Yeah, that floated out today, right?
But yeah, I don't know if we pay a dude who's making $850,000 as a head coach wants to come make less as our defensive coordinator.
Give him that San Diego to Pullman exchange rate.
Yeah,
right?
There you go. Right, exactly.
Making $700,000 in Pullman's basically the same, right?
Yeah, probably. I would say so. California state income tax, with the price of cost of living in San Diego.
Yeah,
man, it's probably even better.
Probably. Yeah, he's probably actually making money by taking a pay cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on up to Pullman. We'll pay you less, but it's worth more.
That'd be great. I'm guessing he's probably not looking for a total rebuild. That's kind of, he's 70 years old. If he's wanting to take, ostensibly a step down, right, to go from head coach to defensive coordinator, my guess is he's just looking for something with a little less stress, a little less, responsibility, and, probably not a, 3-year rebuild, which is what, which is probably what we got going on our defense. So I don't know. It's funny. I remember when, the Alex Grinch thing was going on. By this point in that process, I was definitely, I wasn't panicking, but I was definitely like, what the hell? Why is this taking so long? Now I'm just sort of like, I don't know, man. Leach is weird. He's unconventional. He does whatever he does. I mean, you got the sense that he didn't see this as a real urgent matter, right? which is sort of bizarre, but also, I mean, that's Mike Leach, right? For better or worse.
Yeah, and there's the possibility that it's just not just like when Grinch took over after Bresky. It may just be in a position where it's not a very attractive job again.
Yeah.
It obviously was after Grinch left. That's how they pulled in Clays, but obviously Clays was in a position where he was looking for a sort of second chance type situation. But him leaving the way he did and how the defense tanked this year probably doesn't make the job all that appealing. So I don't know, like it seems like everyone needs a damn defensive coordinator this year, and so even some of the names that float out, like Jim Leavitt or whoever, it's like, we had no shot at him given the other position. I mean, USC is looking for a defensive coordinator, so if there's someone that wants to live on the West Coast and wants to coach defense, they're probably not going to want to come to WSU over USC.
Probably not.
So probably going to be some rando
somebody we've never heard of before.
Position coach at Missouri again or something.
I think the only thing that would disappoint me would be if they elevated somebody off the current staff permanently. So if it was Bellantoni or McBath or whatever, I think that would disappoint me. Anybody else, I'll probably go, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point,
in particular, because he kind of has a proven track record of not being a very good defensive coordinator.
Yes.
So that would
Correct.
be disappointing. Like just because it's like, maybe he's gotten better, but he's had quite a few years of being a defensive coordinator where he just didn't have good defenses. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, is he really the guy that's going to turn?
And in half a season, did not particularly distinguish himself. And look, I don't know enough about defensive schemes or anything like that to say definitively, whether what he did was good or bad. But I didn't walk away from it going, wow, like that was okay. All right. Yeah. All right. There was none of that. You just there were times where they ticked up a little bit, and there were times where they were just as bad as they always were. And that's not necessarily his fault. It's just to say, I didn't see anything that made me think, this guy, all right, this guy might be the difference maker, might be the guy we need to take us forward. I didn't see anything that made me think that. And so you almost, as a fan, you almost would rather have the unknown thing that might be awesome, but also might be terrible, versus the known thing that you figure is probably mediocre, right?
Right.
You feel like you know enough that it's like you just, the intrigue of something unknown is definitely more interesting than, the mediocre thing that you do know.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a bit worried because it would have been cool if they just landed someone awesome. That was a known commodity and just was going to come in and fix everything. But I didn't really expect that to happen. But I hope that, given the timeline with Grinch, you would expect this to be wrapping up pretty damn soon.
I'd hope so.
And, unless we're just looking at hiring, one of the guys that are in the national championship game. I don't know. It's just,
I heard Brett Venables likes small towns.
Yeah, Brett Venables, just get him. He's fine.
I heard he likes small towns.
He definitely doesn't want to move up to be a head coach ever.
No,
he wants to come be. Hey, probably the closest thing to being a head coach is being the defensive coach at WSU.
That's
where
right.
The head coach doesn't even bother you.
Doesn't even talk to you about defense.
Unless you're really screwing up, which Tracy Claeys found out. Like, once you start really screwing up, then the coach comes in and has some words. But,
hey, you know what? You want to be a head coach with Mike Leach. Like, look at Lincoln Riley, right?
There you go.
See, you could be the next pipeline. Lincoln Riley.
Get out of that Dabo pipeline.
That's
Come on
right.
into the Leach pipeline.
Dabo. Whatever.
Yeah.
What's that guy ever done?
I don't know.
Not a thing. I don't know.
Just to give him some bulletin board material because he's always looking for.
Neither one of us is knowledgeable enough to come up with any real names, so we just, throw out garbage and laugh
Brett Venables.
Brett Venables.
That's her name.
Let's do it.
Go get him.
Let's make it happen. He's probably ready for a change.
Probably makes quite a lot. I'm just gonna look up Brent Venables' salary.
Yeah, I mean, what's the exchange? What's the exchange rate from Clemson, South Carolina to Pullman? I'll bet he could take a pay cut and still be making more money.
Brent Venables.
I'll bet he's making like $1.5 million.
He's on a 5-year, $11.6 million contract.
I wasn't even
salary
close.
of $2 million. He's got a base salary of $2 million with incentives. Okay, so he can earn up to $11.6 million. His base salary is $2 million.
Holy shit, that's amazing! Oh my god! Like I had no idea it was that much. Like I assumed it was well north of $1 million.
He is paid more than most Division I head coaches.
Yes, he is.
Division I FBS head coaches.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, obviously FCS, but that's wild.
That is wild.
So we got him with the Pullman exchange rate.
That's it.
With versus the very expensive, was it Columbia, or no? It's Clemson.
They're actually Clemson. In Clemson.
Yeah, very expensive. Rural South Carolina.
Yeah,
known for that.
I'm sure. What else? I don't know. You want to tell a funny bee story?
No, I don't really have one.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, the Moana story. You tweeted about the Moana story where she was like singing, what can I say except you're welcome?
Okay.
Yeah, like I was dying. I'm like looking at this tweet and I'm laughing so hard.
I'm going to try to play the clip up against the mic.
Okay.
See if that works. I got to find it. All right. Wait. Okay. Why is it autoplay? No one wants that. Let me turn it up. Go back.
This is great radio.
All right. It's not playing. Oh, it's auto. Here
is it playing in your headphones?
What can I say except?
What have you done to your daughter, Craig?
Okay, so in Moana, there's the famous
fatalistic 2-year-old.
There's the You're Welcome song,
right?
Sung by the Rock Maui,
right?
And then, but later in the movie, spoilers, they're Moana and Maui are together on a raft, and they're in trouble, and Maui's spirits are down. And he makes a play on his titular song and says, "What can I say except we're dead soon?" And so instead of "What can I say except you're welcome," which is the lines of the actual song, B has now chosen that to say, "What can I say except we're dead soon?"
Oh, she latched on to that part.
And if you go on my Twitter, at the Craig Powers, I have the video on there.
Yeah.
And it says, "We're dead soon," with this big smile on her face. Like,
your daughter is set to be a philosopher, is what it is. She's gonna go to Wazoo for that philosophy degree.
Yeah, she's just like,
she'll be like,
doesn't
what is
matter,
life?
We're dead soon.
We're all gonna die anyway. What's it matter?
Thanks, Maui of Moana and the movie.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh, man.
All right. Anything else?
I'm good. I was drinking a kind of a cool beer tonight.
Yeah?
It's from Off Color Brewing in Chicago. It's a wild ale, which is made with yeast, Off Color's yeast strain, and then they use yeast from 4 other breweries. Central State, which is a brewery in Indiana that I visited, for those of you who listened when I went to Indiana in June. And then Jester King, which is in Texas, Side Project in Missouri, and Allagash in Maine. So I've actually been to 3 of those 4 breweries. So those are all very good wild ale producing breweries, and then they basically they each contributed some yeast and they threw them all into the barrel together, and it's just kind of this golden, what American wild ale. Really, it was really nice, really little tart, very balanced, easy drinking. 6%, went down smooth. Very good stuff. And kind of cool how they brought in like yeast from. Apparently, this is volume 2. They've done it before with different. I'm assuming different breweries. So kind of cool to bring some of the best breweries in the country all together.
Yeah.
And just to pitch some yeast.
Beautiful. I had a Meowza from Georgetown. Yeah,
I also had
double IPA action.
I also had a Kirkland Signature sparkling water grapefruit,
Ooh.
which if you're drinking the LaCroix, that's the pamplemousse version, which sounds way cooler. So, but Kirkland Signature just calls it grapefruit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
refreshing.
Yeah, very refreshing. That was my side beer today. Was a sparkling water.
Yeah, good
That's why
work.
I'm so sober right now. Oh, and also a funny thing about this beer: the bottle is 250 milliliters.
Ooh,
which is roughly 8.5 ounces. So it's a very tiny, cute bottle. It's got off-color likes their branding with little mouse. So it's got these cute little mice on it. And they're reading a book called Untamed Geese.
Ooh.
And then by a fireplace with all the logs that say the different breweries on them. And it's a pretty cool little bottle. And it was very small. And yeah.
Well, that's just adorable.
So I stayed sober on this podcast.
That is just adorable.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Subscribe. Rate us, all that good stuff.
Rate us 5 stars. You can follow Jeff on Twitter at Pod versus Everyone. You can follow me on Twitter at the Craig Powers, and you can see pictures or videos of my daughter and her nihilistic, pessimistic, fatalistic tendencies. Yeah. And also pictures of my beer. So
yeah,
very fun stuff.
Yeah, you can decide which one of those two things is more interesting. It kind of depends on your perspective, I suppose.
All right.
Go Cougs, Craig.
Go Cougs.